So whoever would like to hop in, if there are any takers, then yeah, go for it. And if not, then John, you are technically to the right of me on the screen. So.
Okay, I'll start. Yeah, I'll start off. Let me hide the chat really quick just so I can actually see my poems. Okay. Okay, so I picked 3 poems to share from my new manuscript that I have been working on. It's the wrestling manuscript. It's not actually about wrestling, but it's pretty much about wrestling. So yeah, I'll just share these 3 poems and then we can go from there. The first one is called Madison Square, and the title of the full collection is The Gardens of Our Childhoods. So this is kind of a play on gardens. Madison Square. In the beginning, the garden was an ice rink linked to P.T. Barnum. In 1898, Nikolai Tesla demonstrated the first remote-controlled robot to Cheers, and in 1925, the first ring debuted in a light heavyweight bout between Berlenbach and Delaney. The first WrestleMania was held there too, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, the Iron Sheik. Oh, to be present for history. The roar of the crowd, an ocean on a faraway world, a palace, a grand purple desert under pale milk stars. Why do we like a fight? The spectacle, the violence on the floor. Somewhere a mother holds her grown son for the first time in many years. She braids his hair like he is 8 again, dreams of slowing time. Somewhere a pulsar wind nebula turns around a dying neutron star. A boy lifts weights in a garage in South Georgia, draws pictures of things he can see in the sky at night. In a garden somewhere, everything folds together. A crowd erupts at a shooting star press. A man picks flowers for his mother, fleeting and superluminal, or something beautiful, made by a boy with all his heart. Okay, and then the next one is called For Once the Best Option is the Easiest Option. It costs nothing to hold a door, to believe that each person root-bound to the forest floors and beaches of this odd, great world deserves to have their hair brushed, to be told that there is no one else quite like them in the perfect confluence of things, that strange happenings make for good lives, joy and anger, school dances and silly dreams, movie popcorn, moon butter, heartache and blue-lit stars that heave soft like sleeping rabbits, perfectly warm to touch. For once, the best option is the easiest. We love each other as best we can in all our failure. On days we cannot bear the skin of our own imperfect forms, we build campfires, sing, forgive ourselves such unlikely blessing that we should be here now, faultless, shrouded in grace and beautiful, making all our mothers proud. And then the last one is kind of a weird poem in that I wrote it back in January before all of the pandemic started. And I feel like it kind of conjured the entire pandemic into existence. And you'll see why in a second. So hopefully it can maybe do some good to repair that. It's called Bar Trivia. Venice has been sinking for years. And it's after Wisława Szymborska. Venice seems to be infinitely underwater. Piazza San Marco daily rolling its trousers to greet the morning tide. Offshore, fish spawn in forests of laminaria. Urchins crawl their haunts in a shuffle. A distant whale sounds a rounded call. There is so much everything that nothing is hidden quite nicely. How sea air tastes of metal and oats. A strained kiss, magnesium salts after snow. How one heart finds another, then moves on. Northward, the 4 great basilicas prepare for a year of jubilee, their holy doors unwalled for pilgrims, some small bit of pardon. Across the sea, lovers fall asleep, windows open to a cool Moroccan breeze. A man holds a woman on a waterfront in Sydney, The yellow river floods and recedes and floods again. There is something so natural about it all, or something so human, like bringing someone joy in a quiet way, a reminder that trouble isn't forever, that Venice has been sinking for years. That's all I've got for you.
There.
That second one was particularly resonant now too with the COVID situation. I remember reading that a while back before any of this.
Yeah, like last fall, I think we workshopped it. So
Yeah.
That second one, I want to go hold a warm rabbit. I need that comfort.
I wrote that line when I was staring at my guinea pig, but guinea pig just sounds less poetic than rabbits. So
Well, and a warm guinea pig could be interpreted differently too, I guess, depending on what.
Sure.
yeah, it doesn't have quite the same poetic resonance.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, John. Those were really good.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Thank you.
Just remember, John, Hugo said that music follows truth, right?
Oh my gosh.
All right. So, would anybody in particular like to go next, or do we just want to go down the line?
Since we were talking about rabbits, I have one about it's called the Hall of the Cat Warriors.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
So I've got a few pages of this, and we can see kind of. I'll go till it starts. This is a story that I started. It's a Christmas story, and I started it kind of between editorial moments. So this is one of the things I want to jump back into. I've told Christopher a little bit about this. I decided to write about the meanest office in the world. And then also I went down a rabbit hole, rabbits, looking at online videos of people who make things out of foam for cosplay and for like tabletop gaming and all this kind of stuff. And so I thought, what's better than to bring a mean people from the office together with people who are really, really, really good at making things out of foam. So I'll read just the opening of this. The Hall of the Fallen Cat Warriors. The plan was for Jessica and I to get a late lunch at Grover's after the all hands on deck meeting we were having to prep us for the company going public. But it turned into a thing where instead of us, it was now 10 people, including Penzi, who wrecked lunch and a crappy meeting by calling the IPO an IPA. And it was obvious that he didn't know what either of those things were. As I was getting my jacket and phone, Jessica called everybody over to her desk to show us a video before we left. People told her the videos she liked were lame, and we were all starving. And I said, I wanted to see it. And Jessica looked right at me and said, "Thank you, Charles." And everybody else groaned and said, "Thank you, Charles," in the crappiest way possible. Jessica opened her drawer and handed out peach cereal bars. Then she told us we were going to totally die laughing. Cereal bars are nasty, and peach ones are the absolute grossest kind of snack, which is probably why she had so many of them in her desk, but I didn't say anything. I mean, you don't have to like everything somebody else likes. That kind of thinking destroyed me from the ages of 10 to 16. Most people turned down the snack, but Penzi ate his in 2 bites, then said, "Dying from laughter is a horrible way to die because it's really just asphyxiation." He flattened out the wrapper of his bar and said, "They say that is one of the worst ways to go. Totally excruciating." Then he put his hands on his hips, which looked weirder than it sounds. It takes so much longer than people think to die that way. When nobody seemed like they were following him, Penzi got quiet mad and growled, "Because laughter comes from the diaphragm, which is, the muscle people use for breathing." Somebody said, "Explaining a joke makes it less funny, Penzi." And before a fight could spin up, Jessica said, "Penzi, honey, this is why you don't have any friends." Penzi looked like he'd been hit in the face with a can of corn or something. "You're my friends," he said, looking around with one hand outstretched. It didn't come across like a statement. Jessica turned back to her computer and said, okay, you know that fatty who works in accounts payable, Derek Vestergaard, I finished? That guy, Jessica said. Well, check this out. You're not going to believe it. Jessica clicked on the tab for video and brought it all forward, and we crowded in. I mean, really crowded in, like Tokyo subway levels of human body crush. It gave you a whiff of a half dozen different kinds of shampoo, and a bunch of people's gross sushi lunch stank. An ad for a video game ran first, and she skipped it as soon as we could. Penzi told someone to quit it, then a couple of seconds later, he said, I'm serious, I've already got a bruise there. A close-up shot of a black dungeon appeared. There were 2 skeletons chained to the wall, which was unrealistic because everyone knows the bones would just fall apart when there was no more meat on them. This is why zombie movies are so stupid. All you have to do is wait. After a month, the body just starts to fall apart. My uncle, who works for a trauma cleaning company, told us that at Thanksgiving this year. I mean, who says something like that on a feast day? Penzi would. I know he would. So I decided not to be my uncle or Penzi for all the obvious reasons. In Vestergaard's little corner of dungeon, there were tiny bats hanging upside down and torches on the wall made out of Christmas lights. It was nerdy and not my thing, but sort of awesome if you're into it. I mean, to make something from scratch means that you were at least paying attention. There was a soundtrack of some pretty sick Norwegian speed metal playing, and Jessica turned it up, way too loud at first, which made somebody all the way across the office look up, so she turned it back down. A title in drippy goth yellow letters spun in that said, Phone Forge, episode 65. A second later, it was gone, and there was Vestergaard in a collared cape wearing a black t-shirt that said, Crit Happens. What is crit anyway? Before I could ask, somebody did it for me, and he got shushed. Hey, tabletoppers, Vestergaard said, smiling. His front teeth were tipped back a lot, making it look like he had vampire teeth. He never smiles at work, so we never knew it was like this. He kept talking. The last time we went over some wash techniques for adding patina and highlights to your foam work. This week I'm going to break out the airbrush and we'll get an even deeper dive. Everybody cracked up all at once. How many of these are there? Somebody asked. Jessica said, wait till the truck goes by. How many of these are there? Somebody asked. Jessica said she didn't know. Then somebody else said, duh, at least 65 of them. Pay attention. Vestergaard started showing all his airbrushes. He had like 5 of them. And he was going off about how it runs off a CO2 tank, which is quieter than a compressor. It doesn't take any maintenance, really. It was super dweeby and really boring. So people started criticizing everything, like pointing out that he was wearing those grandpa flip-up magnifying lenses and that he couldn't wait for them to flip him down. Somebody wondered if he watched Game of Thrones. Then somebody else said it was probably too sexy for him. My back was starting to hurt, so I stood up, but I got pushed back down by somebody standing behind me. Vestergaard was already onto a discussion of oils versus acrylics and drying time and different sheens. That's what he called them, sheens. I checked his views and it said he had 1.2 something. I squinted and saw that it was 1.2 million. Hey, you guys, over 1 million people have seen this, I said. Vestergaard is famous. I know, right? Said Jessica said. Nerd famous. Dork famous is more like it. Everybody laughed, even Penzi, who repeated dork famous like 5 times until somebody told him to shut up. And it goes downhill from there.
So wait, so how long is the whole piece?
It's about 2,500 words, and so it's broken into kind of 5 scenes, and that was right at the tail end of the 5th scene, and then the 5th scene ends with a kind of wonderful moment at the Christmas party, where Vestergaard shows everybody how cool he is.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd. That was wonderful.
Well, maybe I'll follow Todd with another office story.
Speaking
Go
of
for
dork
it.
famous,
Maybe this will be a study of rabbits and the American office today. A couple years ago, I was listening to The Great Gatsby, and I think I was struck by how the novel kind of reflects our own kind of cultural and political moments, even though it's kind of separated almost by 100 years. I thought of corporate corruption and corporate greed and cronyism, even prejudice and all of those things. So the title of the story is A Letter to Nick Carraway from Alfred Buxton III, President of Equitable Trust and Bond. So it's a letter to Nick Carraway, the narrator of The Great Gatsby, from his boss. And it's dated September 29, 1922. And it begins, Dear Mr. Carraway, last spring it was with great anticipation and promise that I personally approved your application for the associate bondsman position. An ambitious and accomplished young man like you, a veteran of the Great War, and a Yale man like myself. As one of our newest employees, you represent the enduring future of this storied company. And if I may add a personal note, I know your father from our days at Yale, back when we were just two gangly sophomores in Glee Club's annual minstrel show, singing and soft showing our hearts out as Cotton and Tambo, two hapless Negroes with big dreams of leaving the plantation for the bright lights of vaudeville. In fact, I was recently delighted to read in Yale Alumni about your father's hostile takeover of a chain of underperforming Midwest hardware stores and how he successfully transformed them into a profitable empire. I have no doubt your father wishes the same success for you in the bond business. And that brings me to the purpose of this letter, Nick, if I may be so informal, which I delicately undertake to address a number of concerns Human Resources has forwarded to my office regarding your performance. My hope is that these issues can be privately and expeditiously corrected without any punitive marks on your yearly performance review. With only the sincerest intentions, Nick, I write this letter to you, a young man with boundless potential, a fellow Yelly, an American of noble lineage, and a paradigm of our superior Nordic race, whose lot it is to bear a civilizing light in this dark, savage world. The first issue, Nick, is your habitual truancy over the last 3 months, which I assume from your deep tan and sun-bleached hair isn't related to a medical condition necessitating bed rest. In fact, the evening janitorial service has noticed a concentration of fine beach sand and confetti on and around your desk. Also relating to your truancy, when an Equitable Trust and Bond courier recently observed you mid-afternoon on a Thursday entering a restaurant of ill repute on 96th Street with a stout Semitic-looking man, a man who, I've learned through our company's security department, is either a manufacturer of women's lingerie or the head of a sophisticated criminal enterprise. Nick, I understand the allure and freedom of the big city after a quaint Midwest upbringing, the dazzling lights of Times Square, the long legs and silky voices of the chorus girls, the primitive throb of that crazy bebop jazz, and the charismatic riffraff one encounters. But remember, Nick, that in the bond business, no one ever built his kingdom on 40 hours a week. The 90-hour work week, my boy, separates the trailblazers from the bootlickers, the lame breadwinner from the empire builder. Not to say life is all work and no play, Nick. Every virile Nordic, I believe, deserves a little exotic companionship after a 15-hour workday. I can suggest a discreet Swedish establishment in Midtown that knows how to treat a young man who's new to town. Just mention that Alfie sent you. Another pressing issue, Nick, is your use of company property. 2 weeks ago, a secretary in your department discovered a funeral program for a Mr. James Gatz on a mimeograph machine, a program with your name listed as providing the prayer, scripture, obituary, and eulogy. My deepest condolences for your loss. And then last week, Nick, another secretary in your department observed that you again spent an entire morning on the mimeograph machine, where she later found what appeared to be pages from a novel in progress titled The Amazing Super Stupendous Rich Guy Who Lived Next Door. I must remind you, Nick, that non-executive employees of Equitable Trust and Bond are strictly prohibited from using company property for personal reasons. But I get it, Nick, I truly do. The bevy of creativity and ingenuity brewing in your fine Nordic skull, the endless procession of ideas, I, touched by that same Nordic spirit, am at work on a motion picture screenplay sure to be a hit in Hollywood, a romantic comedy about an investment banker slash serial killer who must manage his complex and erotic love life, all while ingeniously slaughtering the many suitors who impede his amorous conquests. In fact, if you have time, I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Still, Nick, I just ask that you pursue personal projects on personal time, unless you're an executive, which I hope you aspire to, in which case you can pretty much do whatever you want, whenever you want, to whomever you want. The final issue, Nick, is your mistreatment of company property. Last month, an employee in accounting observed you exiting a bathroom stall somewhat agitated, and upon entering the stall to relieve himself, this colleague discovered the words, "I hate you, Jordan, die, bitch, die," carved a dozen times into the stall door. In my understanding, this employee, who suffers from a complaint of spastic bowel, had occupied the stall 20 minutes previously and hadn't noticed this defacement. I understand, Nick, really I do. I'm not so old that I don't remember those first flushes of youthful love and their precipitous deterioration into drunken screaming, telling all your friends what a pig she is, and threatening to throw her French poodle off the Brooklyn Bridge. Because we care so much about our employees' mental well-being, Equitable Trust and Bond provides unlimited access to professional, confidential counseling. If that kind of feminine, gabby, pseudoscience mumbo jumbo is your thing, Nick. Rather, may I suggest something a little more manly, a therapeutic weekend at Ralph's Big Game Hunting just north of East Hampton, an African safari experience that keeps its ranges well stocked with the help of its nonprofit parent company, Ralph's Retired Zoo Animal Sanctuary. I tell you, Nick, after a week of work, there's nothing like dispatching a West African giraffe or a Sumatra rhino to reassert your sense of superiority and control over the world. And if you've imbibed a little too much from the drink cart, Ralph's happy to hobble the animal with a few sandbags. And if you're really under the table, he'll just tie the animal to a tree. Nick, I hope you can imagine your gilded place in God's great plan for equitable trust and bond as you humbly labor to build an American institution reaching beyond our glorious sacred shores. Equitable Trust and Bond is committed to doing its part and handsomely compensating its loyal employees, especially its executives, as we forecast a revenue windfall this next year thanks to the company's vast diversification. We're predicting colossal profits from our recent partnership with a burgeoning real estate company, E. Trump and Son, that will cheaply build residential homes for inner city families, which our subprime lending division will finance with high interest loans and through some contractual small print, will soon after, we hope, foreclose on and resell these homes if even a single mortgage payment is late. Our pharmaceutical division, brilliantly circumventing government opiate bans, will soon roll out a synthetic morphine packaged as a delicious spearmint chewing gum. And just this week, we inked a lucrative contract with a very affable Belgian general in West Congo who's partnering with us to procure some of the finest diamonds I've ever seen in exchange for M3 machine guns, hand grenades, and a subscription to the French magazine Aphrodite Sauvage. All of this is to say, Nick, that if you think the roaring 20s are fat for equitable trust and bond, then just imagine the gravy of the 1930s. Climb aboard the boat, Nick, and together we'll beat those oars faster than the current to that golden promised land where we'll stand like true Nordics for the world to see. And even our ungrateful children will say, "Dad, now I get why you were never around, why you were so emotionally distant. You were building an empire for me, for America. Nick, the future, it's there for the taking. With affection, Alfred Buxton III."
You know, Ryan, I'm so glad that we were able to learn from those mistakes in the past and not repeat or exacerbate any of them. So I think that's That was brilliant. That was
All with the new election cycle. We'll have that rebirth maybe.
Well, I can follow up with an Empire poem. So,
Go for it.
yeah,
We'll call
I'm
it the
really
Empire
excited.
Strikes Back.
I'm really excited, guys, because I actually have a reading with diagram tomorrow for my chapbook. You know, I was supposed to have some readings, so they're doing like a Zoom thing tomorrow, and I started kind of practicing today and realized how nervous I was about reading. So thanks for being like a comfortable audience for me to kind of practice. So anyways, but yeah, so I'll start with the first poem in Tinder. It's called Foxfire. I should have known when he sent me the kissy face. Maybe the point is not to choose. There is a poem in the desert and there is a bike in the middle of it. I can't see it, but it's there above the red cliffs, the blue paint, hunters moving fast toward primary colors. I still don't know what to do with all these bones. I remember the bee dying one afternoon in between the lime green cushion and rotting wood. My friend was there and I didn't cry for 2 days. What I remember most was you stopping to pick up the piece of broken kindling to tell a story of ecosystems, this extinct fungus glowing on the red rocks. I get so tired of men asking me for a blowjob over coffee. I want a helicopter to fly over and to know that it's there. I want the bee to move one of its wings in the middle of the oil slick and for the blue paint to scatter. I want to see your grocery lists and book spines, the desert sky, and knowing that all things end. I want to be the bike that is hard for colonists to reach, to be leaving, always leaving. Months later, a student writes, muscles are some of the first organs broken down, and the most important muscle in the body is the heart. I should have known that in order to take from the body, you have to give to the body. I should have known that I was only building a small empire to put things on. So yeah, I realized maybe a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a friend and like the book is about, and I think I've talked to a lot of you guys, it's obviously, and Laura and John are like my poetry people. So it's about going onto the dating apps. So that really kind of sets it up for just like, obviously I was kind of there for something real and it took a little bit to get there. So yeah, I'm realizing that, you know, I thought I was clever calling it Tinder with an E. I thought that people would understand that I was going into the dating apps for love and that I was getting crushed a lot. But anyways, so yeah, so it's about the dating apps, if any of you guys didn't know. So yeah, I'm gonna read one that's actually not in the chat book, and it has a rabbit in it. So yeah. All right, this is called American Lunar Society. The only way to describe this is to describe a jackrabbit vanishing into sagebrush, the red mountains, the 13-foot woolly mammoth in love with the woolly rhino for the first time. There was no air, no water, only 12,000-foot mountains and the moon's wilderness. The lava, it didn't flow, but it oozed, sometimes like a mountain. I listened to you skin wolves for fun. Don't worry, he says, I promise not to waste any part of its body. Being in love makes me want to unload the dishwasher. There are grizzlies in my mind when we kiss, and the canyon where the sun ate its first star. Some women will say I died the same week the dragonflies died, that I was only a girl walking across a girl's big mouth. Last night you said something awful, and now the Amazon is burning, and I don't give a shit. Of course, meteorites hit Earth and kill things. Of course, the moon doesn't chase me anymore. Finally, I'm alive. Finally, I have a boyfriend who loves me. All right, and I'm gonna read one more, and John and Laura have already heard this, but just to give you guys a little background, I haven't played a video game since like 1999 Crash Bandicoot, you know? So, but then all this craziness happened, and my boyfriend was like, you know what you need Animal Crossing. So Animal Crossing is this video game, and I know, John, you've heard of it, so I'm sure you guys have maybe heard of it. But it's actually really adorable and therapeutic, but also a little bit traumatic too. So this is a poem about, so in Animal Crossing, you like, you build this little town of your own, and slowly as you, you know, gather tree limbs and, you know, plant flowers and stuff, things start to grow. And so a couple weeks ago now, maybe, or weeks ago, I don't know, I'm like the head person in our town, and my boyfriend was like, Sarah, I kind of need you to get it together because you're slowing me down. And so he needed me to do something to get the museum up and running in our town. Well, so we go to the museum for the first time together, and this is what happens at the museum. So, by the way, the person running the museum in our town is an owl, like a bird. Okay, Blather's Museum. More men striking me gently from outer space, more of the owl running the museum, and the one I love showing up to sell a dead bird. What woman sitting on the beach in between her own field and hive, another fishing pole lost to another lake bed, can catch me now? What one place offers the bees chewing their ways out of wax-covered hills, their front legs raised and ready to make heat? 50,000 dead mushrooms this week, 4 abnormalities found just this morning in Neptune's second heart. A stranger drives a flatbed truck down 200 North, and one of his dogs gets lost to the wind. Did you ever imagine the worst case scenario? Did you ever watch the honeybees get their house in order just to be attacked by the spring? I dug for hours through Lake Superior in my heavy brown boots, the honeybees mating in the corners of my intestine. I dug for bell crickets and moths, a butterfly fish he had been collecting for me all along. In my stomach was her stomach, and in her stomach a flooded field of the turkey buzzard's own making. The only sign of life was me pining for that one yellow daffodil, the only other fish I caught when I was 5. The hook I had chosen was lost inside its jaw, and my best friend's mom came running down the hill screaming, "Have you ever hurt a thing?" All right, that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Part of me hopes that you follow up this chapbook with a chapbook of all Animal Crossing themed like poems. Give it like some like really high art title, like Animal, Crossing or something, you know.
You think it's possible, Christopher? I'm feeling it.
You could totally. I mean, depending on how long this quarantine goes down.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
Literary Twitter is going crazy for Animal Crossing. There's all writers like showing that their Switch game, and they're like, "Let it begin."
Yeah. And it's like we keep trying to play and get further with our town, but every 5 minutes I'm like, John, this is a poem. I have to stop playing to write the poem. He's getting annoyed. He's taking over his own town probably soon. So anyway.
I thought putting together a piece of IKEA furniture was the test of a relationship, but you've expanded
It's 2020 and it's Animal Crossing. It's the real test.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you. So, Laura, how would you feel about going?
Yeah, I'm good. I didn't mean to go last. I guess that's what I get for being a procrastinator. But so I am working on this thing. I hesitate to call it a novel, even though I guess that's pretty much what it is. And it has 2 storylines. So there's a contemporary like haunted house / breakup story, And then there's a Greek mythology story, and they kind of twine together throughout the piece until they, in some way, are going to come together at the end that I haven't figured out yet, because apparently I'm a pantser, even though I don't want to be. So, okay, so here we go. So this is from, this is the 4th mythology chapter, and it's the story of the myth that's part of the novel is Prometheus creating people, and then Zeus taking fire from them and Prometheus stealing fire back. So, all right. This is chapter 8. For weeks after Zeus's commission, Athena kept her distance from Prometheus, watching from shadows or around corners, but not drawing near. She was certain he would come to her when he needed her. Zeus paid little attention to either of them. His order had been given, and he expected it would be followed. Meanwhile, as always, he was caught up in his own insecurities, wrapped by the rumors his spies brought back to him from the 4 quarters of Olympus. Prometheus, for his part, wanted to please Zeus, to show his allegiance. He wanted to complete the commission according to Zeus's bidding, but another ambition moved in him now too, surging beneath this surface desire, stronger and more powerful. Somehow in the days after Zeus saw and rejected Prometheus's handiwork, this became his imperative, to create life anew, to show by his own instinct and craft his allegiance to Zeus, to show it in his own way, like he had done in battle, when with no directive from above he had charged forward, brandishing the blade Zeus had gifted him, and dealt the blow that crippled Cronus so that Zeus could move in for the kill. Life had been all glory and celebration for a time thereafter, until Zeus became crippled himself with his own insecurity and drive for power. Now Prometheus worked grudgingly at the commission, chipping away bits of stone, first around Zeus's feet, then with scaffolding around the back of his head and shoulders. The rest of Zeus remained a solid block. The face eluded him most. He sketched out models to follow, tried various poses with clay. He could make Zeus look noble, proud and remote through the positioning of legs and slant of shoulders, but he did not know how to depict the man's face. Eyes narrowed, beard bristling, mouth firm and compressed, or curled in a sardonic smile. He hadn't seen Zeus relaxed and content in many months and couldn't recall from memory what that looked like. To show the hard expressions Zeus always wore now seemed less than flattering to the god king, but to do otherwise would be a falsehood. When he wasn't working at his half-hearted task, Prometheus walked. Whenever any of the others passed him, he would smile distractedly, tugging at the hair at the nape of his neck, or he would walk by without a look, without a word aloud, that is, for he was constantly muttering to himself. Sleeping and waking, he remembered the feeling of life stirring in his hands, the wonder and power of the knowledge that he had created that life. Prometheus thought first of recreating the creatures he'd earlier destroyed, of arming them and presenting them to Zeus as a new tribute. But Zeus would never be impressed by such an army. He'd scorn miniature weapons and spears. He'd snap them between finger and thumb. And in truth, Prometheus himself knew he was capable of better things. No, this new life would have to be something astonishing, something beautiful and powerful, but also intelligent and noble. And so Prometheus concocted schemes, developing and rejecting one idea right on the heels of another. Minotaurs, dragons, 3-headed dogs, these creatures seemed too base for the powers he felt growing and flexing in his hands. He wanted to make something different, something better. Thus would his own desires be fulfilled, while at the same time showing Zeus that he was loyal and would stay loyal. Surely that would be better than some block of lifeless stone. Not 2 days later, when he had all but given up on Zeus's commission and spent all his waking time rambling and pondering, the answer came to him. Prometheus was resting in the shadow of a great cypress, sitting with his chin in his hands, looking down. As he watched the leaf shadows play across the skin of his legs, he realized the one thing that kept the gods separate from and superior to most of the other Olympic creatures was their stature and their ability to walk upright. His last creation stood on 2 legs, it was true, but they lacked the ability to stand eye to eye with him. So what if he made a creature that looked just like his last one, but bigger, like the gods? One that could look Zeus in the face and profess its fidelity. That would be something. In a fever of possibility, Prometheus set to work. Skipping, still working on that part. Okay, this realization loosed Prometheus's hands and energy as though the bonds of discretion and forethought fell away. Somehow he no longer needed or wanted Zeus's approval. His past connection with the thunder god, the camaraderie and trust they'd once shared was gone, and in its place was a conviction that Prometheus hadn't known since the early days of the battle for Olympus. He had a vision for these creatures he was making. If Zeus rejected their service, so be it. They would not be an army bound by destiny to repeat the foolish mistakes of the past, to rise up, overthrow, corrupt themselves on power, and wait for the cycle to repeat. No, he would teach them peace. He would teach them to tend the land and care for animals, to respect one another, to trust, to abhor violence. With their stature, their dexterity, and their intelligence, they could be anything. They could be equals to the gods and titans surrounding them. Maybe Zeus would one day see the value in what he, Prometheus, had made, and maybe he wouldn't. That didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that Prometheus continue the work he had started, that he make more anthropos, that he teach them to hunt and cook and care for themselves, that they be creatures of forethought and forbearance, that they be happy. Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm super excited to read the rest of it. Where do you mind if I ask how, like, where you're at in terms of drafting the novel? Like, is
so I'm working on outlining now. I'm probably about a third of a way through the story in terms of like actually narrating it, but it's kind of just a hot mess. And so I guess I'm on my second draft of like actually telling the story, but yeah, still a lot of work and reshaping and shaping forward to go.
I'm super excited to see where it goes, though.
Thanks.
Oh, Todd, it looks like you're saying something, but you're muted.
Story of my life. Remember, if it's a hot mess, it's easy to shape.
That's true.
I mean, it's what I tell my students all the time. I'm like, at least you have something on the page to work with. So
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that. It's not just in my head anymore like it was for a long time.
Awesome. Well, everyone.
Now, hold on just a minute, Christopher.
Yeah. Yes.
Today is National Librarian Day.
Oh, see, I didn't even know this. So out of tune I am with time.
So
Aww.
let's give it up for our librarian. National
Yes,
Day.
definitely.
Thank you